Sales in consulting is in some ways similar to sales anywhere, but in most ways it's actually pretty unique, and it shares its uniqueness with other professional services more generally. If you're working in consulting, it's more likely than not that you're going to end up with some level of sales responsibility. So it's important to know what that might look like and how it works. Maybe you need to start to sell in order to secure your next promotion in consulting, or maybe you're exploring what you'll have to do in a few years' time as a more senior consultant. Or maybe you're considering buying consulting services and you want to understand how the process works behind the scenes. Whichever your scenario, this video is going to walk you through how it all works so that you can make all the right choices right now. Welcome back, by the way. I'm Charlie, a consulting director and remote business owner, and my Consultant Explorer channel is to help you be so successful in your consulting career that you are set up for total freedom to do whatever you want to in life. And that includes knowing how to sell so that you can secure that promotion or adjust your career direction if you decide consulting sales isn't for you, which, by the way, is something that a lot of people do decide. So I'm going to cover a number of things relating to sales and consulting, and I've segmented out the chapters below if you want to flip to any specific part. First, I'll cover who actually does the selling in consulting and what they each do. Then I'll cover the different types of selling that are done in consulting. And then I'll cover how sales are recognized, i.e. how your company will recognize that it was you who made or contributed towards the sale. And then finally, I'll cover how you can actually get started with selling, or how you can increase your sales. So who is it that sells consulting, and what do they do? There are actually a number of different types of roles within consulting that are all categorized as having sales responsibility. Clearly, there are sales teams of people whose sole responsibility it is to sell consulting work to prospective clients. Typically, these teams work on big deals that might be the first of its kind with a new client, deals that have come in as a request for proposal or RFP from a new client, deals that are a proactive pitch for a new go-to-market proposition with certain types of clients. These people are skilled in shaping the commercials on proposals, in pulling together the right experts to contribute to the proposal, in coordinating proposal timelines, and in doing massively detailed pricing for a high volume of team resources that are included within the proposal. Or in other words, they play a facilitative coordination type role, and they bring expertise into the pricing structure and the commercial strategy. Crucially though, they never work alone. They always bring in consulting resources to the process. Consulting resources bring expertise in the specific niche of the proposal, both functionally and from an industry perspective. Some even just bring close relationships with the relevant client buyers. They have this functional industry or relationship expertise in a way that sales teams don't and can't, because they're out working with clients every single day in these functional areas and industries. So clearly consulting resources also have sales responsibility. And it's not limited to only the scenario where sales teams bring them in. Actually, the majority of sales activity is done by consulting resources without any help from sales teams at all. And this is why, if you become a consultant, you will almost always end up with sales responsibility once you progress up the career ladder. Consultants are the people within the consulting firm who have client relationships because they're working with clients on projects every single day. This means that it is the consultants that both, number one, hear first about potential new work that clients need help with, and number two, have the trust of clients to do a great job helping on that new piece of work. It also means that they are developing expertise that not only can be brought into sales-led proposals, but that can also be used to proactively engineer potential opportunities with existing and new clients too. As a consultant, the more senior you get, the more senior your clients will be. If you're senior enough to be running a whole consulting project team, then you are senior enough to be interfacing on a regular basis with a client at an account who has enough authority and/or budget to be buying consulting services. That client, so long as they trust you and believe that you and your team are good at what you do, may well want to buy more time from you and your team to help with other objectives that they have. So this brings us to the next point, the types of sales in consulting. It makes logical sense that the majority of work comes from existing clients who have existing relationships with consultants who are running projects or who have run projects with them already. Large consulting firms work with large client accounts, and so the pipeline of potential projects is often huge. Before one project has even ended, there are often new needs for new projects already, and clients typically will go to the senior consultants that they know and trust for help with these new projects. This type of selling is farming, so the vast majority of consulting sales are farmed. But some sales are also hunted, and whilst it's largely the kinds of sales that the dedicated sales teams are involved with that are hunted, as described in the previous section, consultants do also hunt. Sometimes consultants become expert in something so niche that it sells really well to lots of clients that they haven't yet met, but whom they can be introduced to via other colleagues who have those existing relationships. Other times, they choose to proactively connect, build and maintain relationships with potential clients that work in the right space, with the intention that at some point in the future, those clients will come to them with a need for consulting work. Consultants generally make their own choice as to whether they hunt or farm, and certain types of consulting work leads itself more keenly to one or the other. Consulting work that typically runs in long, extendable projects creates more opportunity over time for new projects to be farmed, whereas shorter term, more strategic consulting work generally needs to be more hunted. When I made my first sale, it was a weird feeling because it was farmed. Saying out loud that I'd sold a consulting project or closed a sale felt really weird because it felt to me like all I'd done was sell it as an extension to work that the client had already bought. An extension to a long-term relationship, literally years long, that already existed between people other than me. I hadn't gone out and found a cold lead with a new person and nurtured that lead until they bought consulting services. I just did a good job in my day-to-day role and ended up in a situation where my happy client wanted more. And in the consulting world, that was a sale. And it was that type of sale that the majority of all sales in consulting are. So that brings us on to the next question. How are sales recognized? What's interesting is that lots of different people can contribute to the same sale, and they all need to stake their claim to the value of that sale against their personal targets. Someone might contribute a handful of hours of expertise, whereas someone else might spend a whole fortnight dedicated to landing that sale. But both can say in their performance evaluation that they helped land a £500,000 deal, or whatever the value happened to be. Different consultancies have different rules on how sales are recognised and rewarded, but generally it's much more collaborative in consulting than in other industries, because there isn't such a thing as commission like there is in, for example, the software industry. Consultants are not paid proportionately to the value of the deals they close, but instead they're paid in line with the extent to which they achieve their personal objectives. Their personal objectives might have been to contribute expertise to a deal, or they might have been to fully lead, coordinate, and run a proposal motion. It depends on the type of resource. So both people can achieve their bonus or their pay rise as a result of helping in the same deal. And there's no need to work out whether they're going to have to split any commission. There are other ways to recognize sales too, not just on a per person basis. The people who contributed towards a sale may well have come from many different parts of the business, because often lots of different types of expertise is required to close a deal. And each part of the business, or department if you will, is going to want to include the value of deals closed within their financials, if they have revenue targets within their departments. Again, different consultancies have different rules on this, but I've seen some nicely collaborative ways of recognizing the same deal in multiple parts of the consulting organization, which is great if you think about it, because it encourages the collaboration of different expertise, all of which is needed to close that same deal. The one time I have seen things get a little bit more complicated is when deals are international. Often consulting teams come together from across the world to collaborate on closing a deal with a client who wants teams based face-to-face in their various international offices. But it's not possible for a global consulting company to recognize the same revenue more than once in different markets without duplicating the component parts of its global revenue. Global revenue needs to include the value of that deal only once. So it has to be apportioned through discussion and agreement between the various consulting markets involved, which certainly isn't impossible. Actually, some generally smaller consultancies have sales and revenue recognition structures in place that create this splitting complication even at the department level within market. But generally, the most effective consultancies are set up to encourage collaboration as a priority and not disincentivize it. Okay, that got pretty big and scary pretty fast. So let's step back again to how sales really works for you as an individual consultant. How can you make your first sale? Or how can you increase your sales number to hit any targets that you might have? You might have already concluded that as a consultant, my top piece of advice is get yourself onto a long-term project in the most senior role that you can, and then do a really good job, because your client will likely want to extend your contract or bring you and your team into a new project arena with an entirely new contract. That is the simplest and most effective way of almost guaranteeing yourself a pipeline of sales and revenue. Outside of that, if your usual type of consulting work isn't done in long-term projects, then the easiest way to farm is to make yourself available for any bids or proposals that are being requested by clients and or worked on by your leadership and the sales team. And the best way to hunt is determine what your personal expertise is, which client roles it's relevant for, and who your target clients are, and then create a structured way of nurturing your relationships with those clients without any expectation of any immediate sale. Often you have to nurture those relationships over periods of 2 or 3 years before they might start to come to anything. So here are the key takeaways for sales in consulting. 1, it's still an important sale, even if you farmed it from an existing relationship that you didn't even begin by yourself. And in fact, this is what the majority of sales in consulting are made of. 2, collaboration between all the right types of expertise is critical to closing sales in consulting. And you should never get competitive about that, because ultimately your company needs you all to sell together if it's to continue to thrive. 3, whilst most opportunities are farmed, hunting is still also an important source of new revenue for consulting firms. And the fastest way to get involved with this is through leadership or sales team-led proposals, although you might get a great deal of satisfaction from also having your own structured relationship nurturing approach. And 4, and possibly most importantly, whilst you don't need to be salesy at all to achieve huge sales numbers in consulting, you will find that as your consulting career progresses, you need to operate more and more with your sales head on in your day-to-day work. And this may or may not be something that you feel comfortable doing. So let me know in the comments if that's clarified things for you, or if you have any remaining questions. And otherwise, thanks so much for listening. I wish you all the best with your exploring.